Everyone, welcome back to our live stream. I'm Mark, your host and founder of Take 2 Minutes, and I'm joined by my wonderful co-hosts, Jamie, Heather, and Ashley. Today, we're going to be a bit of a different format. We're going to be talking about what's on everyone's minds today. Feel free to share your stories with us in the chat. Plus, we have a special offer for our live viewers. Stay tuned to see how you can get 20% off a Take 2 Minutes membership. As always, I'm going to hand it over to Ashley to moderate this. So thanks for watching. And Ashley, over to you.
Yeah. So again, like Mark said, this is a little bit of a different format. And so I've seen this and these have been really fun as a viewer on like different podcasts and different YouTube channels that I watch to see. It's a more personal touch on just getting into everyone's mind and getting to know the group a little bit, kind of the faces behind Take 2 Minutes and our associates, our affiliates, and that type of thing. So if anyone has anything pressing they want to start with, of something that is related to mental health, a fun anecdote that you want to share, the real premise of this is just what's on your mind.
So I think one thing that's super important to think about when we think about life and mental health and the journey of mental health, it's a journey and it never ends. There isn't a destination that you're going to be like, I'm there, I made it, I'm good. Listen, I've been, in this field for 15, 20 years. And I've been a therapist for 10, 11 years of that. But I've also done life coaching and all the things. And what I've really learned is we never just figure it out. It's a constant state of keeping your eye on the ball and really working towards just being the best version of you every day, right? So like, a lot of times we compare ourselves to how other people are doing. And that's not a good way to go down that road, because you're always going to be left like out of control or feeling out of control or not enough. Your competition in life is really you from yesterday, right? So when you compete against you from yesterday, you just got to move the bar a little bit. Now, here's the thing. You're going to have a day where you blow it up. I promise you. We all do. I do. I blow it up. I don't like to, but I'm a human being, and that's just what human beings do. So when you blow it up, you just reset. I just got to be better than yesterday. So if I don't blow up today, that's a win, right? So I think that's an important piece of this, right? Like, people get all caught up in, am I normal? Am I okay? Is this... Well, yeah, sometimes it is, right? Sometimes just you being right where you're at is right where you're supposed to be in the first place. So really pay attention to where your feet are planted and be present in the moment, and just allow yourself to be, and don't worry about how you should or shouldn't be and all that stuff.
I'm going to piggyback onto that, Jamie, because one of my thoughts for today, something I had already shared with Ashley, is your inner voice. Because you go back, especially when we were kids, at least Jamie, Heather, and I think we're similar ages, you didn't have what everyone has these days. I mean, back when we were kids, back when we were kids, you had possibly your parents telling you right from wrong, maybe grandparents, maybe siblings, but you didn't have an entire internet telling you right from wrong. I mean, today we are inundated with people on social media telling us what to do, what not to do, what we should eat, what we shouldn't eat, what's good for us, what's bad for us. And we're probably all at fault for that too. We're trying to help people, obviously, but the point is, there's a lot of information out there. And something I recognized recently was that a couple times I went out to a restaurant over the last few weeks and I had a drink. I had a glass of wine or a margarita. And afterwards, my inner voice was almost shaming me for that. And my inner voice was, I was really worried about that. Wasn't good for me. I shouldn't have done that. And I think what it comes down to is, to what Jamie, you just hit on, is you're going to have days which aren't as good. If I were to start drinking, a bottle of wine a day, yeah, maybe I should be concerned. But a glass 2 or 3 times a week, my inner voice shouldn't be shaming me for that. I shouldn't be really overly worried about that. And the same goes for sugar. Sugar, we know sugar is bad for us. At the same time, if you have a couple cookies or dessert a couple times a week, in the grand scheme of your life, that's not going to kill you probably. I mean, there's certain people who's probably worse far ultimately, but the point being, moderation is the key. Moderation is what's important for what you're doing, what you're not doing. And your inner voice is terribly important for how you talk to yourself. If your inner voice is shaming you and talking to you negatively or bad about what you're doing, you're going to feel worse about yourself than recognizing you maybe had a slip, or maybe it was just okay. Having that glass of wine every so often really is okay in the grand scheme of things.
That's right.
Amen. Amen. And also, if I may, that whole gratitude and anxiety can't coexist. So when you start feeling that inner voice saying that, or that condemnation, you can say, I am grateful for that glass of wine. I am grateful for that social time. I am grateful for the spot. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And that's a good way of looking at it, Heather, because the gratefulness for the social time, that's probably outweighing the one drink I would have had. Because I was interacting with people, I was out talking to people, and I was having a good time and making friends. And so that's obviously a terribly important part of life also.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've also
Depression.
heard. Oh, go ahead, Jamie.
Depression and anxiety cannot coexist with gratitude. They use the same neural pathway, right? So if you're down or feeling down, you're shaming yourself. You flip that thing around to gratitude, it's gone.
Yes.
Yeah, and I've heard like that negative self-talk, well, it didn't originate from you. So it's basically just someone else's words of you or to you over time in your own voice. And so something interesting that happened. So I was telling you all earlier that my best friend came to visit, and we went to Orlando. We were in Orlando and did the whole Disney City Walk, whatever thing. And we were in an escape room with a family. And I guess just how intense the situation felt made my best friend and I notice throughout like our time at the park is watching these parents handle their children, and like just taking that and seeing that as an adult and kind of thinking about how we were raised, and we're like, has this always been the case, or is it just worse now, or are we just noticing because we're so enthralled in psychology and just want to learn more about it? And so it's really interesting talking about that. We're talking about negative self-talk and kind of where that stems from. You just see it on these poor innocent faces, and like watching them grow up into adults and try to live these lives. And then now you're at a restaurant, like shaming yourself over one drink. It's just amazing, the evolution of that, and like getting to see that in real time in another child.
Yeah.
So the idea there then is how you talk to your children becomes their inner voice.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right. And that's heavy, right? Because we're not our best all the time. And there are times when we're hangry and our kid wants our attention, and then we might blow up, or we're tired and we're just we're at the end of our peopling ability, and our kid wants something right then, right? And we let them have it, and that's people. One of the biggest concerns that I see with parents in my practice is, I don't want to screw my kid up.
Right.
That's what they say. And I just reassure them immediately, oh, you're screwing them up, I promise you. Because we all are.
Right.
And that's what's really, that's important to understand, because whether you're doing all the right things or not, it doesn't matter, because you cannot control how they interpret what you say or do. Right? So I'm not in control of you understanding that everything I'm doing is for your benefit.
Right.
I'm doing it for the right reasons. But what do you see? Right? Actually, what do you see when your dad says, no, you're not wearing that out? You're not wearing that shirt. Or, no, you're not, you're going to be home at 10. What do you think? Oh, you're such a wet rag. Why are you going to tell me? Yeah, man. We get mad about that, don't we?
Yeah.
Why are you trying to control me? Honey, I'm just looking out for you because I don't want you to attract that kind of attention, or I don't want you to do this, or I don't want this to happen to you. but you don't understand that until you're an adult.
Later.
So the way that you interpret it is real to you.
Mhm.
It's not like, oh, my dad's just looking out for me. We don't have that ability to even distinguish between that. It's real. He's trying to control me. He's keeping me down. Whatever that shows up, right?
Yeah. And
A
planting
lot of
those
love in the
seeds.
process. Sorry, Heather, go ahead.
No, you go.
I was just going to say, show them a lot of love in the process or outside of that, and that offsets all that. Just make sure they know they're loved.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So rules with relationship equal respect.
Oh,
Rules without relationship equal rebellion.
oh, wow.
Very good. I like that.
Very cool.
Right?
Because
Right?
relationship's the
So
key in my mind. Yeah. I mean, I have
yeah,
rules for my kids, but I also have a relationship with them. And I think they listen well because there's a relationship. They know they're loved. They know I love them. I'm just trying to help them. And there's that relationship. So I totally get that.
that's right. Parenting is so much easier when you focus on the relationship. Now, look, I'm not saying be their best friend. You're not there to be their
Right.
friend. You're the parent,
Right.
right? But you have that solid relationship now, because with that relationship, it opens the door. Now I can speak into their life. And they'll hear it, not just, oh, there goes dad trying to control me again. Right, Ashley?
Yeah. When I have a question, because you hear about this too, I think I saw something online somewhere where someone did something and then they were like, that's going to be a core memory for that child. So how, I guess, finicky is that? Where is it like one incident will stick with this child forever? Or is this probably a continued behavior from the parent over time that kind of trains the brain of the kid?
Man, so that's a pretty deep question. And we don't have the answers for that. But I will tell you what I know from trauma. So, one of the things I do is I am a trauma therapist, right? And for trauma therapy, what you got to look at is what's showing up right now, and then where did that come from? And a lot of times, a majority of our trauma has happened as a child. Now, there's two kinds of trauma: big T trauma and then little T trauma. Okay. Now, big T trauma is the stuff that we know is going to leave a mark. Right? Going to war, being raped, almost dying in a car wreck, house fire, like that's like, oh, that's gonna leave a mark probably, right? So we all kind of understand that's scary or hard to deal with. Little T trauma, that's the stuff that all of us have and that all of us experience. Now here's where it comes in. Something happens, and then we make a meaning about it, and that becomes concrete to us. So Ashley, come up here and do this problem on the board, 3rd grade. You're like, sure will. And you go up to the, and you do the problem and you do it wrong. And the kids in the class are laughing at you.
How dare they?
What do you say to yourself? I'll never do that again.
Yeah,
or I should have known better, or I'm so stupid, or whatever you say. Boom, that's trauma.
Yeah.
So now your mind is hyper aware for that negative cognition of I should have known better, or I'm so stupid, or I'll never do that again. I'll never volunteer. I can't trust people, whatever it is. So now your brain is, you're hyper aware looking for that because your brain likes to be right. So it's watching for that to show up. And then it's like, see, I told you so. See, I told you I can't trust people.
Right.
That's where it starts, right? So that then becomes a core memory. Now here's what happens. We can clean that up through what they call EMDR. There's talk therapy can work too, trauma therapy, right? But EMDR is where it's at, right? That's like
I know.
putting it on hyper speed, right? So when you do EMDR on that, it removes the emotional connection from that memory and allows it to be processed, but it's still a memory. Because we don't get rid of those memories.
For those not to know, Jamie, do you mind talking about what EMDR is?
Yeah, just real quick. Eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. So it's kind of like voodoo, right? Like it's just moving your fingers in front of their eyes, and I'm being flippant about it, but it's a process of distracting the brain, right? It creates a bilateral stimulation in the brain that distracts it just enough to remove the emotion from it, that you can process the information, and then you desensitize it, and then you reprocess it and you put in something different. So instead of I can't trust people, it's over and I can choose who to trust. Okay, cool. Now you've shifted your thought around that memory. So anytime that memory shows up now, it's, yeah, that's okay though. I can still choose to trust people or not trust people.
Yeah, I've been doing EMDR therapy for almost a year now, and it's the only thing that's actually worked for me. Because when I was doing talk therapy, a lot of it was my emotions and my logical side. It's almost like I was like still shaming myself or gaslighting myself into being more logical about it. So like shoving the emotions down further, and they just became more disconnected. And so it was just a struggle and like forcing myself to do things as I'm working through therapy, where this was like, the way I described it to go back to drinking is when I stopped drinking back in 2023, it was kind of like to see if I could, and I could, but I was forcing myself, versus now with EMDR, I don't even really want to drink anymore. So like the outcome might be the same, but the process or approach feels very, very different.
Yeah, that's right. So there's a book called The Body Keeps the Score. It's by what's his first? I can't think of his first name, but Bessel van der Kolk, and it's a fantastic book. It's like the trauma Bible, right? And he describes all the different modalities to get rid of trauma. And talk therapy works, right? It just takes a lot longer. Whereas EMDR, it's just like boom, it's done, and it's not something that like has to sink in. It's not something that it come back later. We got to redo it. It's like once you're done with that, it's over and you're done.
Yeah. And I think with talk therapy, it was good to have that foundation, because I think, and this still happens to me from time to time when I get upset about something, the deep reason why I'm upset is not the reason that it feels like on the surface. So talk therapy is good to like uncover that and then work through that route with EMDR. So I do a combination of both. So I think, like you said, both are really good to have.
That's right. That's right. So that takes me to that quote by Socrates: "To know thyself is the beginning of wisdom." Right? And what everything we've been talking about so far is really just understanding your baseline and who you are. And then if you have some reactions that you don't like, or you have some ways of being that you don't like, okay, well, let me take a look at that. What am I willing to take on? What am I willing to work on? Or is that, you know what, I don't like that, but I'm not really even interested in taking that on right now. Okay, that's fine. You just should be moving the bar something down the road, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think
Heather,
that's part of our, well, I was just, because it's interesting. It's part of our testimony, right? I had EMDR. I had a stalker. I had someone harassing me. I had someone going after my kids. So there was a lot going on, and EMDR helped with, just like you said, my therapist, she said, if you're going to write anything about this, do it now before we do EMDR, because you're not going to have those emotions surface. And
that's
that
right.
was such a good point. Yeah.
So how I describe it is like when trauma happens, it gets stuck. So it gets like trapped in the emotional part of the brain. What EMDR is allows it to be unstuck from the emotion, move on to the cognitive part of the brain so they can be processed and put away.
Okay.
Right?
Wow.
So when we're having unprocessed trauma, what comes of that is these overreactions, these highly emotional reactivity, right? And what you're reacting to, you're not even reacting to what's in front of you. You're reacting to the first time it happened, and then every other time it's been reinforced. That's why we overreact.
Okay. Yeah.
So learning how to, okay, I got to get rid of that emotional connection. Now I can just take it on. What's happening? Let me talk about this, and then I move it on. No big deal at all.
Amazing.
Right? Yeah. So that's why you won't, like, I've had people when we get done with EMDR, they're like, I can't even bring up the feeling that I had towards that person or about that. I can't even make myself feel that anymore. Well, because there's no
Right.
more emotional connection to it.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah. That's so
Heather,
great.
Heather, was
And
your
it's so,
therapist accurate? Your statement, was that accurate, that afterwards you didn't the same, you couldn't write about it, the feelings were different? Was that accurate?
absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah. Absolutely. And
Fascinating.
I think there's a level, I've gone through a lot of, Christianity stuff and that journey and forgiveness is so important. So I think those layered together is that I've released it, and something even recently just happened where that person, or one of the people they followed me on Instagram. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so I alerted the family and, of course, block her and them and things like this. But part of me wanted to be like, well, maybe they've changed because people change. I know I'm a much different person than I was, 10, 15 years ago. So, but yeah, so, things can resurface like that, but I didn't have I wasn't scared. I wasn't, I didn't feel any trauma. I was just like, oh, okay. So, yeah.
That's
So
right.
I just think yeah. Go ahead.
No, I said that's right. That's awesome,
Yeah.
Mark.
So I have one question for Heather now, since we've talked about things that aren't dietitian related, and I thought I actually have an actual question for you, which was something that off topic what we've been talking about completely, because it's a completely switch of topics. But what are your what's your take on different types of sugar? So for instance, you have refined processed white sugar, which I think, I have an opinion, it's the worst for you, but other alternatives for sugar, like dates, pure real 100% maple syrup, honey. How do you feel like different sugars are good or worse for you?
Yeah. So that's a good question because we tend to lump sugar. I mean, even people are afraid to eat fruit. And I'm like, no, please eat the fruit, right? That has naturally occurring sugar. Maple syrup is good. Date paste is good. And even sugar, like if you go, to grandma's house, she's making a cobbler or a pie or a cake, whatever. And sometimes I know I have those memories of walking in the house and like, oh my gosh, she made whatever. So I think if you have those things, like you said, on special occasion, as long as you're not having like teaspoons of sugar cane every day, you're okay. But it can definitely, what's that?
Moderation again is the key. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And you know what came up, what's on my mind for today, this links into it, is that I noticed also, in looking at movies that are coming out now, do you know they're re-releasing The Goonies? They're re-releasing Top Gun. We're hungry to get back to our roots. We're hungry to make it more simple, right? And so that falls in line. I was like, oh my gosh, that's what I've been, really trying to encourage people to do, is simplify your nutrition. It leads to simplifying your life. Decluttering things can help to declutter your mind, obviously, right? So I think that sugar in excess, yeah, it's not good. And sugars do, a lot excess sugar, more than 28 grams a day of sugar, not including fruit. Its added sugars can cause problems, right? They lead to disease. They stymie our immune process, and they give us those peaks and valleys of highs and lows. So we're gonna get that sugar rush, and then we're gonna crash. So avoiding that and having, really focusing on that fiber again. I'll say it over and over. It's about the fiber, having about 30 grams a day. Eat the rainbow every day. Keep it simple. If you're hungry for getting back to your roots, if you're tired of the same old game, change up your game plan, and keep it simple. And you'll find those cravings for sugar. If someone is having a hard time with sugar, it goes back to our microbiome and the connection and the communication with our brain. So sugar feeds yeast. Intestinal yeast overgrowth is known for giving us that sugar craving. So we want to just squash it with, so love you talked about earlier. So in our emotions and our interactions, we want to squash it with love, and then we want to squash it with fiber when we're eating it for our body.
Very good. And I think we could even go talking about sugar and 28 grams a day. Again, this is my opinion, but I would think that 28 grams of high fructose corn syrup is very different from 28 grams of honey.
Well, oh yes.
Content.
So I mean, if you, the more natural, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's the way the benefits, right, that you get from it. So you're going to get benefits from that all natural raw honey. You're going to be, getting that, inoculation of the local pollens and stuff. And then having real maple syrup and even the date paste, the dates. I mean, that's how people break their fast, is with medjool dates and walnuts, and that, if you have that, that's known as a vegan Snickers. So you stuff a walnut inside a medjool date, and it tastes just like a Snickers. And you put it between apple. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Put it between what?
You put it between two apple slices that are shaped like potato chips, and it tastes like a caramel apple.
That makes sense. I mentioned dates because I was following a guy who has a CGM monitor, and he eats different things to see how it affects his blood sugar. And at one point in time, I can't remember, I think he ate like 4 dates, and he said the sugar content of these 4 dates was something like 64 grams of sugar. But 2 hours later, it really had very little effect at all on his blood sugar level, because dates had enough fiber and everything else to offset the actual sugar spike in his blood. It was crazy.
Yeah. So that goes back to the glycemic index. And right. So there's a glycemic index. Yeah. So berries are low, the dates, other, fruits that you would think, oh my gosh. So typically berries, cherries, dates, things like that. Oh, the fruit is great. Can't go wrong.
So I've noticed since I went keto that if I cut out HFC, probably 15, 20 years ago anyway. Yeah. Right.
Good for you. Yeah. Everyone should really.
Yeah. It's just poison. It's just poison, right? I'm not keto anymore. But what I've noticed now is, if, let's say we go out to eat and I get a sauce on something and it was made with HFC in it, right?
Yeah.
Within 30 minutes, I'm sneezing.
Oh, really?
Oh, really?
Oh, wow. Yeah. I've totally. So it's not necessarily like to all sugars, but I've noticed like I get sugar sneezes.
Wow.
Sugar sneezes. It's wild. It's wild. My wife will say, "Oh, you got the sugar sneezes, huh?" Like I'll get congested and I'll start. It's unbelievable. So yeah, the sugar's the devil. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It certainly can be, right? And it's sneaky. And, that's another thing too, that leads into a whole other ball of wax with I've become disenchanted with a lot of parts of the food industry that we've trusted, and since it's just really sad about what's being added to our foods or used to filter them. And they're chemicals that our bodies weren't meant. So I just thank God every day. Like, thank you for making it through the years where I was just eating crap, And
you don't even realize it. You don't even realize that you're doing it, because if you follow Jordan Peterson said this. He was asked the question. He said, what was the hardest thing you've ever had to deal with? And this guy's had a practice and all these things, right? He said the hardest thing I'm still, and he said to this day, I'm still struggling with, is the deception of the food pyramid.
Yeah. Yep. I know. And I'm a dietitian, which makes
it's upside down. Right. But he talked about how evil and insidious the food pyramid is.
Okay.
To say that we should have so many grains and little protein and eat an Oreo instead of eating an apple, because it's insane. Right?
Yeah. You know what a food pyramid I do like is Dr. Andrew Weil's anti-inflammatory food pyramid. That one is really amazing if anyone needs it. Yeah, it's Mediterranean diet.
Okay.
Mostly. Yeah. And then it falls in line with the blue zones, where that's where those, they have the modules where no more than the 28 grams of added sugar, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah. But yeah, that's amazing.
I made a note to look at that here. I got it up right now. Perfect.
I have a
Anti-inflammatory food
question
pyramid.
about what is the whole thing? Because I've heard this a couple times now about like having 30 grams of protein, like first thing in the morning or for breakfast.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. On my end, it's frozen. So, okay. Can you repeat? Sorry.
So I keep hearing that you should have 30 grams of protein with breakfast or like in your first meal of the day, but I don't know why. What is like the whole thing around that?
Oh, this is so interesting. So I've been against hyperproteining for a long time. No, I'm not against it, but I just don't speak to having a lot of protein at a meal. You're really not supposed to have more than 30 grams of protein per meal. Some people are having 50 plus grams. And in general, this is like one of those things where if you have, well, let me back up. Breakfast is supposed to be, in general, the biggest meal. So eat breakfast like a king, lunch like a prince, dinner like a pauper. And so you do want to have more in the morning. It's your power up time. And like, Jamie was talking about brain food, having the steak or eggs and, things like that. And that's good. But your body can only process or absorb up to 10 grams of protein an hour. And that makes sense because it takes us about 3 hours to fully empty the stomach and digest the food for it to go right through the GI tract. And my son actually sent me a text asking about hyperprotein. So, or asking about how much protein can be processed per hour. So I thought, oh my gosh. And he was like, that's it? And I said, yes, like this hyperprotein is just something to really think about. And, I thank you for asking that question.
Is that why some people get stomach aches when they drink a protein shake? Because it's like 30, 40 grams of protein and they can only digest 10, or is that a different issue?
I don't know. There's a lot of things it could be, but it could be if they're having milk, if they're having any kind of dairy in there, or if the powders and potions that they're using have something that they're not quite tolerating, or maybe it's supposed to be ingested at a slower pace. So it could be something like that too.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good. We got to be cognizant of everyone's time. I think Jamie has to have lunch still, so I appreciate everybody's conversation. We're at the 30-minute mark.
I gotta go eat some. I gotta go eat some protein. I got steak and eggs coming.
Awesome.
Do it.
Well, thank you for your time. Thanks to everyone who's watching, or everyone who's watching. If you are watching, the promo code to get the 20% off is podcast, and we will be back next Wednesday at the same time for another episode. I appreciate everyone who is watching, and I hope you enjoyed our conversation. Have a good day today. Thank you very much.
Same bat time, same bat channel.